Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me? Anyone type if you can hear me in the chat. Hi, Peter. Well, thank you very much for making time and coming on to this inaugural event of the Celo in Uganda digital event series. My name is Umar Seviaga. I'll be your host for this particular series, and this is a very inaugural event. The Celo in Uganda digital event series is set to be a monthly event series with 2 events each month that shine the spotlight onto the work that Celo is doing in Uganda. And for the very inaugural event, I will be joined by Anca, who is a partner at cLabs. But before we actually get to that, let me first introduce myself. My name is Umar Seviara. I am the eco lead at cLabs working on Celo for Uganda. I joined cLabs in April. Prior to going to cLabs, I was working at Uganda Telecom, where I'd been for 7 years in the customer service section of the business. Then I jumped into cLabs at around end of April, and I've been there for 3 months now. My guest today is Anca Bogdana Rusu, who basically leads the strategic partnerships, policy and advocacy at cLabs. She joined cLabs after having spent over 8 years at the World Bank and International Finance Corporation, and there she was focused on financial inclusion and fintech. Anca has worked both with regulators and public authorities, as well as with the private sector institutions on digital financial services in emerging markets in Africa, Latin America, and Europe. Her work looks at how technology can advance financial inclusion for those unserved by the formal financial sector, as well as bringing the gender gap for access to financial services. Welcome, Anca. So, diving right into this, trying to share my screen. Okay. The theme for this event is a new chapter in Uganda's financial inclusion, and it's going to be focusing on what Celo can offer towards Uganda's strive towards being a financially included country. The agenda is going to be split into 3 sections. We shall have the basic overview of the financial inclusion state in Uganda. Then we'll go into an intro of Celo. Then we'll round it off with a question and answer session at the end. But feel free to ask any questions that you may have along the way as we proceed. As you can just use the ask a question button at the center of your screen. We'll answer them at a go and have that wrapped up. So diving right into it, we're going to have a glance of financial inclusion in Uganda. Financial inclusion is a state of having access to and using a broad range of quality and affordable financial services which help ensure a person's financial security. So the key terms here are quality and affordable financial services. So they should be of good quality and they should be affordable by everyone. Financial services include everything from loans, savings, insurance, and payment facilities. So it's a broad range of services, I think. For the case of Uganda, we have the National Financial Inclusion Strategy, which was launched in October of 2017 and is set to run until 2022. It's being driven by the Ministry of Finance, Planning and Economic Development, along with the Central Bank, which is the Bank of Uganda. It envisions Uganda where all Ugandans have access to and use a broad range of quality and affordable financial services, which helps ensure their financial security. It has an overall objective of reducing financial exclusion to just 5%. Now, like the independence monument here that you can see, which reminds us of Uganda's independence as a newly born nation, the strategy seeks to have all Ugandans attain financial independence and be able to fulfill their dreams and hopes as citizens of Uganda. The strategy is built on 5 pillars, which all play into 3 points of contact: increasing access, increasing usage, and increasing quality of financial services. For the scope of this interaction today, we'll be focusing on the 3rd pillar, which is building digital infrastructure. But all these 5 actually come into play when it comes to formalizing this plan and having it go. The strategy identifies 21 gaps that are currently in effect that are hindering us from having full financial inclusion, and we're going to look at the ones that affect the digital side of the structure. Right. So jumping straight into it here, gap number 1 is that the one-size-fits-all KYC approach is really inappropriate for opening deposit accounts. This is why you have a bank needing that all customers who come for opening up bank accounts have to have the same level of know your customer identification documents, basically. So the farmer from the village, along with the corporate CEO, have to have the same level of KYC, and that is really not practical. To remedy this, the strategy proposes that a national risk assessment for anti-money laundering and combating of financing of terrorism and implementation of a tied KYC regime be implemented. So the AML, anti-money laundering and combating of financing of terrorism are key elements that have to be tackled and catered for within KYC recommendations. Now, on this front, unfortunately, Uganda is not really doing so well. As of February 2020, this very year, we were identified as a country that had strategic deficiencies in our anti-money laundering laws here, which has resulted in Uganda having to sign a high-level agreement and agreeing on 8 action points. Number 1 of which is having a national anti-money laundering and combating of financing of terrorism strategy, something that is going to be implemented at national level. And now this is going to open up the door to de-risking, whereby financial institutions have to really look at who they're giving services to, and many individuals who don't really meet the bar will end up being denied service. So that will actually be a problem for financial inclusion. But going forward, that is where we stand. We're not really doing that good on that front. Then gap number 3 is that financial institutions and mobile money service providers cannot verify the national IDs at their points of interaction. Well, to cater for this, the strategy proposes that the National Identification and Registration Authority, NIRA, in collaboration with the National Information Technology Authority, NITA, develop a system to verify national IDs and allow service providers to do the same at their various points of contact. And this is the progress here is that this has been done. This database really exists, and for the greatest part, any telecom operator in Uganda, along with any bank, can be able to verify a national ID to be genuine or to be a fraud at the point of interaction with the customer. Now, this remains a problem that the national IDs have their own barriers towards being issued into the country per se. NIRA, which is the authority that is supposed to have this issued, is still having stress bottlenecks that are really hindering the issuance of these national IDs. And to bring this into perspective, in March of this year, the State Minister for Internal Affairs, Honorable Kania, was on the floor of Parliament, and he notified the nation that 17 million Ugandans have not gotten their national IDs. That is 17 million Ugandans who effectively cannot open a bank account cannot get access to a mobile SIM card. So effectively, to a great extent, they are formally excluded from the financial system. 17 million is really a big number towards our fight for financial inclusion. So that is still an issue that needs to be addressed there, the issue of the identity. Gap number 10 looks at inadequate interoperability within the financial sector. And it outlines those 4 remedies there per se. Now, the progress here is something that we really need to stop and first shed more light on, in that the real champions in this fight for interoperability, we have our mobile network operators, the Bank of Uganda, the Uganda Bankers Association, and the fintech community. The mobile operators, they're the real champions of mobile money, because they are the ones who bring the networks on. It is their innovation. The Bank of Uganda has been very helpful going forward in being flexible towards having regulations for mobile money and also putting up platforms for innovation within the financial sector. The Uganda Bankers Association has also innovated in a way that they have brought us agency banking, and as of 2018, they've been able to roll out a platform, a shared platform for all banks in Uganda to be able to have interoperable services and cut on costs by using a shared switch, which is very innovative and something that is driving interoperability within financial services in this country. Then the fintech community, these are really, they're really the private sector, and they're like at the heart of innovation. They've been able to give us payment on-ramps through various systems. They've been able to give us payment on-ramps through basic feature phones via USSD. You can be able to access menus on a basic feature phone. They have been able to get us web portals to access these services. They have been able to use domestic cash. They've been able to use apps and also point of sale terminals, whereby these are 5 payment rails that you can use to be able to pay for various things. And you can still fund these 5 rails with 4 sources of funding, namely cash. You can fund them with cash. You can fund them with cards, debit and credit cards. You can fund them with a bank account, or you can fund them with mobile money. So this is an innovation that has been championed by the fintech community with various payment processors, merchant aggregators, and people who are providing payment gateways for us to be able to have more interplay between these financial systems. So we have to really acknowledge this move by these various entities. Then also, currently, there is no initiative to give out free digital services, devices to anybody who is marginalized. No one is giving out free phones or free laptops to people who are marginalized in society. That is yet to become a thing. Then we have the National ICT Initiative Support Program under the Ministry of ICT and National Guidance, which is basically which looks at having innovation in the ICT ecosystem grow in Uganda. And so far, they've been able to have 2 waves of grants. They've been able to have 2 waves of grants. Actually, these were termed awards. The first one happened in 2018, where they awarded out a total sum of 2.5 billion Ugandan shillings. And the second wave was last year, 2019, where they awarded out 6 billion to various innovators in the fintech space. And it's a very good initiative that is encouraging Ugandan digital service providers to innovate and have a vibrant ecosystem. So that is a very good initiative from the government. Then as of May 2020, the National Payment Systems Bill was passed, and it's waiting presidential assent into law. So that's progress on that front. Then now we're looking at the issue of weak competition within financial services. And towards having this eliminated, the progress is that for the greater part, the financial sector is still largely left to the market forces of demand and supply. There are really no caps from any entity to say that this is what you should charge or this is what you should be running your business like. And this can be seen in the bank lending rates, which are currently at an average of 17% in Uganda, which is contrary to what the central bank's key rate is, which is at 7%. The central bank rate is at 7%, but the average commercial bank rate is at 17%, which is quite a spread there. And it's actually causing some bit of backlash within the financial sector as we speak. Then also mobile money fees, that's really left to the discretion of the mobile network operators. There's really no cap on this. So it depends on what they feel is competitive. Then we're having increased localized service menus, such as USSDs that can be converted to local languages, IVRs at the mobile network operators, whereby if you call into a call center, you can be able to be helped in a local language. Those are increasingly available in the country, which is a very good plus. Then the government set itself a target of June 2021 to have cashless payments widespread across the entire government sector. And this is supposed to be a catalyst for the private sector to also start going cashless. We're yet to see this really take up, but we see that for the most part, government is still heavily cash-based. Many fees and charges are paid at tellers inside banks. So there's a lot of cash in the system still. So they have around 11 more months to go to make this a reality. We shall see how this will play out eventually. Then we have the 12th gap, which is around the security of going digital. There are risks that are inherently there in anything that is digital. And to remedy this, the strategies suggests that financial service providers comply with the existing National Information Security Policy. Now, this policy has been in force since 2014. However, the digital world has threats that are ever evolving. And speaking right now, we're at the very entrance of the fourth industrial revolution. And this is a revolution in technology that is going to be characterized by the blurring of the lines between the physical realm, the digital realm, and the biological realm. Things will be as though they seem one. You can easily transcend those boundaries within this technology. We have advances in things like quantum computing, genetic engineering, cloud computing, blockchain, artificial intelligence. Basically, we shall find that to bring this into perspective, the law has to be able to be dynamic and keep up with the changing trends. Because now with the blockchain coming on, you get concepts of things like decentralized autonomous organizations, DAOs, and smart contracts. Things that can easily be run, but can't easily be shut down. And the law may not be sufficient to cover such developments. So this has to be a going concern. Otherwise, we risk being in a position whereby we're playing catch-up all the time. So this is the snapshot of where we are as of right now. Currently speaking, we have 78% of all adults financially included. And this leaves 22% of adults excluded from the financial system. Men, I would say male residents are more included than females by a factor of 1%. And the people in the rural areas are less included than the people in the urban areas. And the drivers of financial inclusion right now, as you can see, is mobile money is at 56%. It's the chief driver of financial inclusion in Uganda, followed by the banking sector, which brings it at 11%. Then circles and down the list up to the capital markets. Well, capital markets are really not a big thing in Uganda per se, as even if we were to do a small survey here, I don't think many people would know what the closing value of the all shares index at the Uganda Securities Exchange is today. It's something that is looked at like it's for a chosen few currently. So a lot of work needs to be done towards that front. Bringing it home here I have some statistics for the impact of mobile money in Uganda. Currently, we have 4 mobile network operators. We have MTN Uganda, Airtel Uganda, Uganda Telecom, and Afritel. Among these 4 operators, we have 23 million mobile money accounts, which is in stark contrast with the 26 commercial banks, which have 14 million deposit accounts among all of them. Now, this is really stark in that for each single deposit account for a bank, you have 1.6 mobile money accounts. Now, the banks in Uganda have had a 5-decade head start Mobile money only came in 2009, but the banks have been there since before independence. But mobile money has been able to close the gap and even pass within just 11 years. And this is a trend that we really need to look at closely. Now, when it comes to getting the 22 currently excluded onto the financial system, keeping in line with mobile money and the successes attained there, we have looked for a solution that caters for digital identity, as KYC is a very big issue when it comes to financial inclusion, as we have seen. It has to be able to cater for fast and secure payments, but nobody wants to lose payments on the way. It has to be secure end to end. It has to have low fees, and that nobody wants to pay 5-10% of what they're sending in fees. That is really not affordable. It's quite on the high end. Then it has to be mobile friendly, in that the mobile phone is the single most effective financial inclusion tool in Uganda. Then lastly, but definitely not least, the value of the currency being sent has got to be stable to be able to end users to enjoy the benefits of being onto that financial platform. And better for all these 5 points named, we believe that Celo is well posed to actually have this done. And to tell us more about Celo, I will be handing it over to Anca to take it from here.
Thank you so much, Umar, for this insightful presentation. And thank you for keeping to sort of managing the slides as I talk to through them. As the slide here clearly states, the mission of Celo is really to build a financial system that creates the conditions of prosperity for everyone. But the question then is, what is Celo? And Mark, if you could go to the next slide. Really, Celo is an open blockchain platform that makes financial tools accessible to anyone with a mobile phone. The platform has been inspired by extensive research in emerging markets and developing countries, ranging from the Philippines, going through Tanzania, Kenya, Sierra Leone, and then crossing the ocean into Colombia, Argentina, Mexico, among others. Celo has built a mobile-first blockchain platform alongside a suite of financial tools accessible to really anyone with a basic smartphone. And when I talk about a basic smartphone, I really talk about sort of a secondhand $14 phone that we were able to pick up in the market in Freetown or Monrovia earlier this year. On the platform, value can be transferred faster and cheaper than traditional bank wires using globally accessible technology. And since digital currencies are completely programmable, a wide array of financial services can be created really without using costly intermediaries. As you can see on the slide, the approach that Celo takes is a multi-layered one. It's really full stack. So we can talk both about the Celo blockchain, which is open source and decentralized, the SDK that allows developers to build native mobile dApps, as well as the dApps that have been built to date on the platform. To go a little bit into more detail on that, the Celo blockchain is an open cryptographic protocol that allows applications to make transactions with and run smart contracts in a secure and decentralized fashion. The Celo blockchain code has shared ancestry with Ethereum, for those of you who are familiar with the different protocols out there, and maintains full EVM compatibility for smart contracts. However, it differs in that it uses a Byzantine fault-tolerant consensus mechanism rather than proof of work, and has different block format, transaction format, client synchronization protocols, and gas payment and pricing mechanisms. The network's native asset is Celo Gold, which is also an ERC20 compatible token. In terms of the decision of why we decided to use a different consensus mechanism, that really goes back to the transaction speed and synchronization, which is 17,000 times faster on Celo than it is on some of the bigger chains or the more familiar chains to some of you, such again as Ethereum or Bitcoin. At the next layer, we have the Celo core contracts, which is a set of smart contracts running on the Celo blockchain that comprise much of the logic of the platform features, including ERC20 stable currencies, identity attestations, proof of stake, and governance. These smart contracts are upgradable and they're managed by the decentralized governance process. Last but not least, we have applications for end users built on the Celo platform. The Celo wallet that you see in the image is an app, a first of an ecosystem of applications that allows end users to manage accounts and make payments securely and simply by taking advantage of the innovations in the Celo protocol. Applications take the form of external mobile or backend software. They interact with the Celo blockchain to issue transactions and invoke code that forms the Celo core contracts API. This way, third parties can also deploy custom smart contracts that their own applications use, which in turn leverage the Celo core contracts. Applications may use centralized cloud services to provide some of the functionality. In the case of the Celo wallet, for example, that is push notification and transaction activity feed. Now, if we go to the next slide, please. I wanted to talk a bit about some of the technical innovations that I think, especially in the context of the presentations that Mark gave, talking about the gaps in the ability to reach full financial inclusion in the context of Uganda, I think are really important to highlight. And the first one that I wanted to talk about is the fact that Celo's blockchain is really mobile first. The proof of stake protocol is optimized for efficient light client syncing on mobile devices. A light client is a piece of software that allows people to use blockchain networks by connecting their devices with the full node, the computers that collectively maintain the network's transaction history. And to connect, the light clients download bits of data from the full node. The reason for which this is important is that it's really the first time that a blockchain is built from an infrastructure level, really for a mobile first experience, which also enables then developers that build their own applications on top of the blockchain to be able to design for a mobile experience as opposed to what's happening right now, which is designing for desktop experiences that then have a mobile interface. If we could go to the next couple of slides. Next one, great. The other one that I wanted to talk about is the fact that the Celo protocol works with stable currencies. The Celo network features a stability protocol capable of hosting an ecology of stable value currencies, such as Celo dollar, which is pegged 1-to-1 to the US dollar, regional currencies, commodity-based stable coins, and others. The goal really is to be able to have currencies that are pegged to either fiat currencies or other values, and have this family of stable currencies be backed by the same shared reserve, which in turn makes the reserve a lot more stable and the value and the peg of the currency much more stable. The reason that I think this is important to highlight is because a lot of people, rightfully so, talk about the very lofty claims that some of the digital currencies in the space make, with a little bit of skepticism because of the extremely volatile nature of some of these assets. The question always comes and says, well, if somebody has only $100 to invest or to spend and is trying to make a remittance transfer, if that currency loses 20% of its value from the moment the funds have been sent to when it's have arrived, it's really making people worse off. And to be able to address that, we decided that stable value currencies are really the best way to push, to take advantage of the speed of transaction for digital currency, their programmability, but being able to present them in a format that's a lot more amenable to the end user. And then last but not least, if you want to go to the next slide, Umar, what I wanted to talk about is another innovation, which is the ability to map public addresses to phone numbers. Sending cryptocurrencies typically involves directing funds to a lengthy cryptographic address. And the Celo wallet simplifies this process through a technique called address-based encryption. A simple verification process lets Celo users map their phone numbers to a cryptographic address, and in turn, this allows people to transact with anyone in their phone's contact list, creating really a user experience very similar to centralized apps and payment solutions such as Venmo or M-Pesa or mobile money in general. The reason that I think this is really important is because in addition to simplifying the way transactions are being made, it answers the question of financial identity and digital identity. Without identity, it's impossible to find or to be found. And in the context of money, identity is access. Cell phones can provide access, but today they're not made for money. And so the identity protocols enables folks who use this feature of the Celo blockchain to send and receive payments only being given a phone number. And the protocol in turns relies on these mappings of phone number hashes to blockchain addresses to make sure that a lot of the hassle of dealing with addresses is taken out. The one thing that it does longer term is through this mobile identity, users can build a reputation within the system based on the number of people in the network they've transacted with. And this reputation system can enable people then to establish credit history and enable the creation of a range of future financial services like peer-to-peer loans and insurance. And one of the things that I wanted to go down is, let's see now how it really plays out for a user. I wanted to walk through the experience of, go to the next slide on the Celo wallet, Umar. I wanted to walk through the experience of what it is to sign up and test the Celo wallet. Further 2 slides, I guess, more. Umar? Great. So what it looks like sending transactions here, we are seeing the transactions as being made, very similar to what a payment applications would look like, sending $5, thanking Renee for coffee, and then you see how the payment gets confirmed, and it shows down at the bottom of the screen that it was for coffee for $5 and who it was sent to. If you get the next screen, Umar. Again, it's very easy for people to send funds to people who are in their contact list on the phone. They don't need to preload or download the app. The way that it goes, the flow is very similar to selecting somebody from your contacts list, sending them funds, and what it does at the same time is inviting them to join and verify their address on the blockchain, while the person who receives the invitation, which can be through SMS, through text message, through WhatsApp, or other messaging apps that we are still integrating, the funds that are being sent are being held in escrow by the Celo protocol to make sure that only once people are verified, they're able to access the funds that have been sent. Umar, if you want to go to the next slide, we would see how onboarding looks. So this is where the person receives the invitation, the link sends them to download the app, they choose the language, enter their name, the phone number, and then the country codes, and then they're able to solicit the verification. And that's pretty much it. The process takes, I think, about 2 minutes overall to copy the invite code and then to get verified by the network. Obviously, the more full nodes we have running on Celo, the faster the process goes. For each verification, a user will receive 3 text messages that are generated to make sure that the user is in the possession of the phone that they're using. And at the end of the verification, the phone number gets mapped on chain. And then you see if you allow for text messages to be easily read by the application, they can automatically be checked. So this is how, obviously, the Celo wallet, which is the first from an ecosystem of application, works. Now, I wanted to go to the next slide, Mar, and then we can talk about a lot of the conversation in the context of blockchain and digital currency usually rests on privacy or how cool and new the technology is. Our focus from the beginning has really been on what are practical use cases, where can we bring actual impact through our work. And so a lot of our efforts in the past couple of years have been on where do we see blockchain and digital currencies making an impact in the world around us. If we go to the next slide, we also realize that in order to be able to have people understand how to think of use cases and what are the most interesting use cases where blockchain can provide a solution, it's important to understand what the value proposition of blockchain in general and the Celo blockchain in particular can be. And so we list here a couple of those that really have been the most relevant ones that we have identified through conversations with our partners. And that means from government institutions or international development agencies. A lot of their focus has been on their ability to transfer funds in a transparent and trackable way, where they can trust that the system is immutable, cannot be tampered with. And so it helps the government as well as institutions that transfer funds to reduce corruption, eliminate fraud, and ultimately with the PKI mapping, eliminate ghost users. Another thing that I think is really important to keep in mind is really this new ability of programmability, being able to program features and attributes into money. Think only of vouchers, social payments from governments that can be quite cumbersome to ensure that they are delivered on time, that the right people are being targeted, that they are being spent within the time period that they need to be spent. All of that can be easily programmed for ERC20 for programmable digital currencies directly into the funds. One thing that I also wanted to make sure that I note is that on the Celo blockchain, and this is not one of the items that I highlight on the slide, but the Celo blockchain, you have the ability of paying gas fees into the currency that you deal with. So unlike other protocols where, for example, if you look at DAI, you're only able to pay gas fees or transaction fees in ETH. On the Celo blockchain, you can pay it in stablecoin or another currency that is available on chain. We did this for very clear end user increased usability and just friendliness overall, and not forcing people to have to deal with more than one currency. Now, of course, when Celo claims that the mission of the team is really to ensure, to work towards prosperity for all, that is a very lofty goal. If you want to go to the next slide, Umar, and there's absolutely no way that anyone can be successful in reaching that goal alone. And that's why the cLabs team together with over 90 other institutions, have formed the Alliance for Prosperity, which is a mission-aligned network of organizations fostering social impact and financial inclusion through the use of blockchain technology. As part of these efforts, Alliance members, which include leading technology firms, nonprofits, mobile wallets, payment processors, global investment firms, are building mobile-friendly financial tools on top of the Celo open blockchain platform. The Alliance goal really is to enable more people to use digital currencies, empowering anyone with a phone number towards a prosperous future. Alliance members are spread across the world, from the Philippines to Turkey, Nigeria, Colombia, Brazil, with I think a really worth mention of Crypto Savannah in Uganda that we are really honored to work with. And if you go to the next slide, you will see just the logos of a lot of our Alliance members. They are focused all on very clear use cases because, again, we want to bring the promise of blockchain from the ether and the potential of technology to reality. And in the next 3 minutes, I wanted to briefly touch upon some of the 3 use cases that I think are really interesting to highlight, particularly in the case of Uganda. One of them is what we call the send use case, or remittances. And here I think it's really important to understand how one of the biggest advantages of transferring assets and value through blockchain, it's that ability to not only to make it faster, but to make it much cheaper because you're only really paying for gas fees, which are less than 1% of a cent per dollar, and to be able to send it in an interoperable way, which mobile money isn't able to do right now. And therefore, you are really simplifying the entire process. With your wallet, all you need to do is select the phone number of the person you want to remit money to. It doesn't matter if they're in the same room with you. It doesn't matter if they're across the world. The transaction gets validated in under a minute and for under a cent per, under a tenth of a cent per dollar transaction. And then, of course, we are working in the various markets where we're present with a number of cash in, cash out partners to be able to allow people either to exchange the funds for goods and services or to cash out into fiat. Another use case that I think is particularly interesting is what we call the earn use case. We have had quite recently a pilot in Kenya that we intend to scale up. We're working with Appen, a micro-work platform, and what we did was really through a mobile work, through a mobile interface, young people in Kenya were able to perform small tasks online for which they were paid. The problem with micro work is that tasks in themselves are very small. They can be very simple. They're not paid in extensive amounts. And so it may take a couple of days to get to $5. But when it comes to cash out, if PayPal or TransferWise are the only way to receive the funds, especially if you're working remotely, then that cuts quite significantly into the amount of money that you have made. However, what we've seen is with Celo, it's less than 0.2% of a gas fee, and the transaction, as opposed to taking 1 to 3 days, as it would with TransferWise, for example, it's completed in seconds. And so it really, especially in the current condition, enables people to work safely from their phone in their home and still be able to ensure a minimum level of income available. And then last but not least, I wanted to touch upon the fact that we've worked in the past and are currently have a couple of projects with international NGOs looking at transferring social payments to recipients, and they're currently always faced with the problem of how to do this fast in a way that they're able to respond to emergencies? How are they able to do this reliably, especially in places where agents may not be available? And how are they able to do this at a cost that enables them to really pass on the majority of the funds directly to the end recipients? And we really found that there are quite a few savings, both at the level of the NGOs in terms of time and turnover, and in the percentage of funds that beneficiary can receive when these transfers are made on blockchain. And then I know this question will come, so I wanted to get in front of it. Omar, if you can go to the next slide. We're currently working, and some of those partners are part of the alliance, with a lot of cash in, cash out, and off ramps to be able to allow people that receive funds in Celo, whether it's Celo or Celo dollars or other stable coins on the blockchain, and use them, exchange them for goods and services, as well as exchanging them into fiat. And I think I'm going over time, so I will stop there. And thank you, everyone, for your patience for listening to me, and happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Anca.
I see a question in the chat. In which other countries is Celo available? And until Omar sort of is able to resume video, I'll read them. So right now, our mainnet has launched, and we have, similar to Omar, we have ecosystem country leads in South Africa, Turkey. We're just hiring for Kenya and Nigeria. Had last interviews with people who applied today. And this is in the region. We're present in Latin America, from Mexico to Colombia, Argentina, Brazil, and then Philippines and India right now. And we have a couple of other job descriptions out. Okay. And then a question from Nikhil: what do governments need to do to amplify the effect of Celo for financial inclusion? Oof, that's a loaded question. I think that the first part for governments, I think it's education. I would urge anybody to learn more, not only about Celo, but about blockchain and the potential of programmable money and of digital assets in general, because they can solve different aspects and fill different gaps of financial inclusion. In terms of governments directly, and I think education is really the first step, because then governments would be able to, one, adjust regulation in a way that accounts for the specificity of the blockchain technology, and again, in a way that consumers are protected, but they don't stifle innovation. And I think that's really important to reach that balance. And then I think the rest is really questions that the governments are already working on when it comes to financial inclusion, especially in sub-Saharan Africa, which is infrastructure and connectivity. And I think in between those, plus ensuring an ability to test things out in a fast way for sort of small groups of people. So testing and iterating for some of the fintech companies, and again, this is not particular to Celo, but to a number of other fintech companies, piloting learning very fast in a way that's safe for the financial ecosystem is also really important. I don't know if there are any more questions.
Tom is asking, do you have bank partners in each country?
Do we know? We do not at this point. We are definitely interested in working with them. We work with some agent networks as well. I see that you're working with agent stacks, and thanks for pointing that out, Tom. Would definitely reach out to you. I'd love to learn more about it. Not at this point. We are talking with a couple of them. I think it's only a matter of time where in some places those partnerships will emerge. But I do think, again, similar to governments, there's still a lot of education that most of the folks in the traditional financial sector need to have in order to really fully grasp the potential of digital assets and blockchain. But if you are working with a bank who you think may be interested in talking to us, we would love to talk to them. And even if a partnership doesn't come out of it, I think, again, starting conversations and mutually understanding each other's interest is really important. And yeah, definitely, Tom, we'll be in touch. I've taken down your email and would love to talk after this. Thank you. We love our model too. I think it'd be great to partner. Absolutely. I'd love to answer more questions, even hard questions.
Yeah, we have around 8 minutes left. So, Gilbert says we have a very wonderful model and very interesting.
Can I share a bit more about the microwork earn pilot? Yes, I can. So what we did there is, again, Appen is a microwork platform. They train software for AI and machine learning. And so they have a variety of tasks. They work with a lot of clients, including social media clients, to train algorithms. And so they have a variety of tasks, from very simple ones, which can include tagging a receipt or recognizing bridges out of a set of 10 images, and up to more difficult tasks that you would have to. They have, I think, 10 levels of difficulty. And each task is paid per task. The payment isn't very high, right? So if all you're doing is recognizing that the final number of a receipt is correct, then the payment is lower. If what you're doing is transcribing that receipt, then obviously that task is better paid. But what we did with it is, without actually even training the people that we worked with, I think, 40 people for the initial pilot. We're ramping up with a few hundred later on, and provided them with a mobile app, which allowed them to access the work directly from their smartphones. And they were able to perform it. They allocated about 10 hours a week to do it. I think everybody made on average $10 to $15 per week for those hours. And then the problem is Appen usually pays through PayPal, but PayPal can be really difficult in terms of speed, the type of ID that you need to sign up, but also the cost that it takes for these amounts of money. And so the Appen model was that they wouldn't release funds until somebody reached $25. $25, if you are a student in Kenya, is a lot of money. And so we were trying to solve for how do we empower both the people who provide the work and the people who do the work to make these transfers for smaller amounts faster and much cheaper, right? And so what we did with the pilot was really test how, how easy would it be for people to perform the work, to receive the payment, and then to cash out with our partners in Kenya. And we actually found it was a great model. And we are ramping it up both in Kenya with partners and looking to work with an international organization, one of the UN agencies, to really scale it up and make it one of their core programs. And the reason, again, it's that with digital currencies, you're able to transfer $3 very fast at a low cost and then immediately be able to use it, which really makes it a lot more interesting. And I think especially in times of COVID, when people go through alternate period of lockdowns, to be able to work from their home, from their phone, and still be able to make money. You're never going to get rich out of it, but you're still going to be able to ensure that minimum income to be safe. To me, it was really important. And I think we have shared on our Medium page a blog that talks in more detail about the pilot in Kenya. And then soon enough, we'll probably announce the launch of the next phases. Is MoneyGram a partner? Not at this stage. We'd love to work with them. We think that everybody has something to win if remittances become cheaper and faster, and even international money transfer such as MoneyGram is able to use and provide more services to their clients through the programmability feature. In the event that central bank digital currency become a reality, what do you think will be of cryptocurrencies? I think they're complementary, to be quite honest. Central bank digital currencies still need platforms to run on. I think that provides an advantage to platforms that are able to allow for central bank digital currencies to be issued on their platforms. Celo is one of them. We've definitely had interest from central banks trying to understand how they could take advantage of some of the programmability features in the event of launching digital currencies. But then you have to remember that one of the things that it's an important feature of money is interoperability. Right now, interoperability means forex exchanges, right? You can take it's interoperability between the Ugandan shilling and the dollar. And depending on the way the central bank digital currencies are being designed, you still need to be able to go from one to the other. And don't forget that a big draw for some people to digital currencies is the fact that they're not launched by governments. And so you can also talk about, and I think this is really important, about community currencies, where people in a certain community want to be able to really incentivize folks in their community to buy and sell locally. And that is, again, an extremely legitimate use of digital currencies that CBDCs can't really answer. And I think we'll come to see a lot more along those lines. Regulation. How are you prepared to be compliant with already established AML regulation? Sure. First of all, technology, blockchain is a technology, and so technology per se doesn't have to comply with AML regulation. It's the different use cases and application that is mandated to comply. So for example, a custodial wallet would have to comply with KYC regulation. Exchanges have to comply with regulations. Institutions that build applications to lend or save or transfer money on blockchain have to comply with regulation, but protocols are technology. They're not financial providers. So I think it's really, really important to make that distinction, right? With M-Pesa, for example, you don't ask the software provider to comply with the AML regulation. You ask the financial provider to comply with the regulation. Now, and then I want to get to really, I know we're getting really close to the end. There's this big misconception that because blockchain works with sort of public addresses, that privacy means that nothing can be found on blockchain. And actually, the opposite is true. If you look at the reports that companies like Chainalysis publishes, they're able to track on public blockchains such as Celo's. But in their case, where they're looking at Bitcoin and they're looking where Bitcoin moves from what wallet to what wallet, while they can't identify the person behind the wallet. That level of transparency of showing the flows of funds is something that the current financial system isn't able to do. In the current financial system, AML is being done at both ends. So they can identify who initiated a transfer and who received the transfer. In the case, and so it's really end user point, which is why one of the biggest practices in money laundering is really to send the money through 100 accounts until you lose track. Because to issue a subpoena to get those accounts takes about 6 to 7 months per year, per each institution. With blockchain, what you do, you monitor the transfer of funds. You know all the time where the funds have been and where they're going. You may not be able to ID the end user, but you always see the funds. And with data analytics, it's very easy actually to be able to flag accounts that start looking suspicious as long as you train your models well. And so you will see that even the FBI digital crimes, cyber crimes unit has stated multiple times that they would much rather criminals use Bitcoin than cash, because with Bitcoin, they can do the data analytics and they can track it. With cash, once it's gone, it's gone. And I think this goes back to the education piece. The more educated the financial regulators are about the potential and the really unparalleled visibility that they get if funds are being transferred on chain, I think that once that education is done, you will actually see a lot of regulators preferring blockchain and really embracing it for just the tools that it gives them to do their job faster. Okay, what do you think is the biggest hindrance to crypto adoption in Africa? I think is the biggest as everywhere, education. As long as people understand what the use cases are and what it can be used for, adoption will come. And what problems it solves for them personally, adoption will come. I think in that sense, it's very similar to the surge of mobile money. Once people understood what it is, how it works in their advantage, they started asking for it.
Yeah, so those questions closes the session. Before we call it a wrap, I would like to just a moment. I'd like to invite you all to our next session of the Celo in Uganda event series, whereby I'll be hosting Crypto Savannah, represented by Mr. Alexander. It will be next Thursday. It will be a bit later. This will be at around 7:45 p.m. Thursday. So you can actually register for this session right now. It's in the call to action button right there on your screen. And hope we can see you there.
Before we go, Mar, I also wanted to share that we really love to engage with the community. And so we have an ambassador program where we encourage people to sign up to. Please go to our website and look for Celo ambassadors in your country. We'd love to talk to you.
Yeah. Thank you, Anca. So thank you again for coming through for this event, Anca. I'm sorry about the audio feedback which many of people have been getting, but I believe it will be better next time. For everybody who has given us a few moments of your time this Friday evening, thank you, and we hope to see you next week for the second event in this series. Other than that, thank you very much and have a very good rest of your day.
Thank you, everyone.
Goodbye.